Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books, and today I'm here with a video that I have been working on for over a year now. Ever since I first read Adriana Herrera's American Dreamer, I knew that I wanted to do a video dedicated to the Dreamer series and to the books of hers that I've read. It's taken me this long to finish the series. I originally thought I was done with the series a month ago, and then I found there was a book I was missing, so I've now finished it and I'm ready to give an overall review to the Dreamer series and to talk a little bit more about what Adriana Herrera does in her romance novels, which I think are really fantastic. Just right off the bat. I should also say right off the bat that this is a romance series that engages with politics a lot. If you're someone who doesn't want politics in the romance novels, this is not a book series for you. I actually do think that in one way or another, politics always comes through in romance books. But what Adriana Herrera does is just very explicitly put them there. You still get all the other elements of romance novels. You get the happy ending, the romance story, all of that, but the politics are a significant part of each and every single one of Adriana Herrera's novels that I've read. So let me start by talking about each book individually, the tropes, the characters, all of that, and then come back and talk about some of the themes that I've found in the series overall. So the first book in the Dreamer series is American Dreamer, and this book got my attention right from the beginning. It is a male-male romance. One of the main characters is Nesto, who has an Afro-Caribbean food truck, and he's moving his truck to where his family lives in search of, making a living and finding success with his food truck. And then he meets Jude. Jude is a librarian at the public library who finds Nesto's truck and loves the food. Jude speaks Spanish, and one of the themes that I really love in the story is the role of family and friendship. Throughout the Dreamer series, we follow a core friendship group that Nesto belongs to, and then we get to see, the behind the scenes of their families in each of them. And Nesto is Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Dominican, and so we get to see how close he is to his family and how important family and food are for him. The description of some of the food in the food truck, by the way, made me hungry, which was a bit difficult because I tend to read in the evenings before bed, and so I was getting hungry after I'd already eaten dinner. But so that was really great. One of the other themes that you'll find in Adriana Herrera's books, though, is trauma, and Jude in particular is dealing with a lot of trauma, and that makes the relationship a little bit difficult because Jude has this unresolved issues that he is fighting, and it's just issues that haven't been resolved. And so that makes him very resistant to this relationship. And as a result, Nesto can sometimes come off as a bit pushy because he knows what he wants and he knows that this relationship can work. He knows that they're good together. But it is, I know, a trope that it's not going to fit it's not going to be good for everyone. But just to let you know that it is there. The next book in the series I actually have in physical copy. It is American Fairytale. In this story, we follow Camilo, who is a social worker in New York, as he falls in love with Tom. Tom was at first a one-night hookup, who then shows up at Camilo's work. And it turns out he's a wealthy donor trying to donate money for a cause that Camilo will basically be leading. So the conflict in this story is that Camilo wants nothing to do with a rich, super rich person, which Tom is, filthy rich. But Tom keeps surprising Camilo because he, one, has family in the Dominican Republic, knows Spanish, and shares the same values that Camilo has. But it's a struggle for Camilo to understand that someone that wealthy can have those values, because it's all about social justice for him and helping people in difficult situations. So once again, trauma is a part of this story, and we see it throughout. So I really, really love this one. This is one of my favorite books in the series. I loved American Dreamer, and I think I liked this one even more. My favorite book in the series is book number 3, and that is American Love Story. And in this one, we follow Patrice, who is a professor and activist who manages to get a tenure-track job, which is very hard to get these days, but he gets a tenure-track job at a university where in the same town where Easton lives. And Easton and Patrice have a kind of on-off relationship where they've hooked up for a while and they stopped, and now that they're living in the same town, Patrice is very hesitant to enter into a relationship with Easton because Easton is the acting district attorney in town. And Patrice is an activist, and he's especially interested in issues of like police brutality, police violence against Black and brown people. And so that puts them at odds when certain situations happen in town where Easton is in a difficult spot of having to negotiate between the police in town and the laws and his role as the acting district attorney, and then his personal beliefs about what is wrong in these situations. Well, Patrice doesn't want to compromise his activism and his politics because his boyfriend's the acting district attorney, and so that's the central conflict in this relationship. And so when I say, if you don't like politics, don't pick up these books, this is what I'm talking about. That they're a core part of these stories, these social justice issues, and for me personally, it's what made me love American Love Story so much. Adriana Herrera is Afro-Caribbean, she's Afro-Dominican, and so she handles these topics so incredibly well. Like her own politics, I think, are very clear there, but she also gives us a lot of nuance in the way she portrays Easton, who is acting district attorney, so he's not the permanent district attorney, but he has to make a choice here about what he's going to do given the role he has, and then his choices moving forward beyond that role, and his choices given who he has fallen in love with, right? And I really enjoyed reading about these couples struggling with these very real issues. The last in the series is American Sweethearts, and this is the first book in the series that is a male-female relationship. We follow Juan Pablo, or Juanpa, who is the physical therapist for the Yankees, and Priscilla, who is a police officer. And her job has always been an issue in the relationship. This is a second chance romance. Actually, the way Juan Pablo and Priscilla describe their relations, this is like their fourth, fifth chance at romance, because we're going back to Camilo and Tom, who are getting married. They're throwing this huge wedding in the Dominican Republic, and they're flying all their friends there. And this reunites Juan Pablo and Priscilla. Juan Pablo has had to do a lot of internal work. He's going to therapy, and he's working on his personal issues, especially about Priscilla in her job as a cop, but also what all of that had meant to him, because his dad was a police officer and he had been expected to go into the same line of work and then chose not to. And so there's a lot of baggage there to work through, and especially his feelings about, this woman that he's in love with doing this job and them just not being able to make it work. This book has a ton of angst, a lot of angst, and it was probably one of my least favorites in the series, but I still recommend it if you like the tropes. I think the story still worked for me. It was just not quite as good as the rest of the books in the series. And then the final book in the series is a novella, American Christmas, in which you follow Yin and Ari, who are already in a relationship at the time the novella starts. And the conflict here is that they're trying to find the perfect Christmas gift for each other. And, they have a limited budget, but they want to do a lot. And this was such a heartwarming conflict because I've kind of been in a version of the situation in which you want to make the other person happy, and that can go too far sometimes, especially when you're both just trying to make each other happy. It can lead to some miscommunication, but it was really heartwarming and really cute novella. So if you're interested in holiday novella, I think American Christmas is a good one. So now that I've given you the basic rundown of the books in the series, let me dig at some of these themes a little bit more. So like I said, that Adriana Herrera is Afro-Dominican, and that is very clear in each of the books. She always has a Black Latinx character in her books. Some of them are interracial relationships, but not all of them. And so race always plays an important role. It is not something that just is, which is fine. Like, I can read books where the character just is of a particular race, and it doesn't need to have a discussion about race in it. But in the Dreamer series, there are discussions about race, especially when there's an interracial couple. Like, race is a recurring theme in the story, and the couple discusses what their racial backgrounds mean and how it can contribute to miscommunication or misunderstanding to come from a different cultural background. And within that, though, I think Herrera is really careful to make the white characters in here also be very culturally savvy. All of these books, I think most of them are set in New York, or at least partially in New York. And so there is a cultural awareness that even though I've never been to New York, felt really realistic and accurate for what I imagine New York must be like, both New York City and New York State. And so those are important themes here. Another recurring theme in all of these books is that of trauma. In some of these stories, you see the characters attending or negotiating therapy and working through some of that trauma. But I think it's an American Dreamer where you don't see that. And so that's why you want to be careful if any of that's a trigger. There's a lot of homophobia from family members in that book, and characters struggling with that. And so you want to know that is there. To me, the way that the trauma of the characters is handled was really well done. I don't have first-hand experience with all of their traumas, and I just had to rely on the fact that Adriana Herrera was doing a good job depicting that. Herrera is a trauma therapist. She works with survivors of domestic and sexual violence. I have attended several kind of talks she has given, organized by bookstores, but also on her Instagram she did a series of talks which she invited other authors to come chat with her, and that was one of the things that came up from time to time, and how because she has so much experience working with survivors of trauma and of violence, it's something that does show up in her books quite a bit. And so because I don't have that first-hand experience, I'm trusting that because she is still working as a therapist, that she's doing a good job with that. With the stuff that I do have experience, I thought she did great, and it's wonderful to see characters actually seeing a therapist and working through some of that. I sometimes am frustrated in books where there's clear trauma for a character, and I just want to yell at this character to go to therapy. Especially in romance novels where I'm like, I need you to be okay here. Go to therapy. And here I get that in Adriana Herrera's books. I get characters actively working on themselves, attending therapy, or wanting to make their community a better place, right? Like the fact that You know, you have a food truck owner and a public a librarian there, and community, and the kind of community work that they do was a big part of the book. And then same with the social worker, like that brought the community into a big part of that. And then an activist and a cop, like it's just the community work and social activism is a major theme in each of these books. And so that's why I really wanted to talk about Untitled in these books, because I think that there's a ton of readers out there, especially a lot of romance readers, that would really, really like this series. And, you know, it's just a matter sometimes of finding the right tropes that you like in these books. But I think a lot of us are looking for romance novels that engage with social justice themes, and that happens quite beautifully in the Dreamer series. A lot of her characters are also immigrants. There is sometimes talk of the trauma that involved in being an immigrant or being the child of immigrants. And I don't read a ton of books that engage with that, especially in the romance genre. And so I really, really appreciated that throughout the whole series here. I have read a few other of Herrera's books. I read Here to Stay, and I read her short story in the anthology Dukes I'd Like to Have, and those I've enjoyed very, very much. Here to Stay is a male-female story, and I know she has at least 3 other books that I need to read, including another holiday novella, and then she is going to be releasing another book soon. And so she's a very prolific writer, and one of the things that stood out to me, none of the books in the American Dreamer stood out to me as like, oh, she's a first-time writer or a writer just starting out. They stood out to me as really being fleshed out, well thought out, well-written books. But as I'm reading more and more of her writing, I get the sense that she's getting better and better, that she is playing with a lot of new and different tropes, and that she still has a lot to say and a lot to write, and that is so exciting for me as a romance reader, as a Mexican immigrant living in the United States, as someone who cares about social justice issues and who craves that kind of representation in romance novels. I've really fallen in love with Adriana Herrera, and I think this is one of the series where I think, like, for most of the books, I gave them at least 4 stars, and I know the last one, American Sweethearts, I think I gave 3 stars because it was my least favorite. But this is one of those cases where I think collectively the series is a 5-star series for me. Individually, the books might be a little bit below in terms of book rating, but the series is fantastic, and I really enjoyed coming back to this friend group and learning more about each character and really discovering Adriana Herrera's writing. So I know these books are not going to be for everyone. Romance has a way of really filling my heart and helping during a very difficult period to just like keep going and believing in all the love and wonderful things that relationships and life has to offer. So I highly recommend the Dreamer series, and really pretty much anything Adriana Herrera has written. So if you've read anything else by her, if you've read the Dreamer series, let me know down below. I know a few of you have dabbled in some of the books in this series, so I'd like to hear your thoughts and experience with them as well, because, you know, especially if you have a different experience, I'd love to share some of that with everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!